The small town of Boundary, nestled on the border of Washington state and Canada, was a place where time seemed to stand still. With its quaint houses, modest population, and the towering evergreens that surrounded it, Boundary was the epitome of peaceful seclusion. But this peace was shattered one cold winter evening when the town's residents came face to face with an ancient terror. It started with a series of unsettling howls that echoed through the forest, sending shivers down the spines of everyone who heard them. The howls were unlike any animal sound the townsfolk had ever encountered, deep, resonant, and filled with an eerie intelligence. Whispers spread quickly through the town. The mythical dire wolves had returned. Standing 7 feet tall at the shoulder, these beasts were the stuff of nightmares. Thought to be long extinct, their reappearance signaled a night of unimaginable horror. The townspeople gathered in the town hall, a sense of dread hanging heavy in the air as Mayor Daniels addressed the crowd. "We have to defend ourselves," Mayor Daniels said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "We know what's coming. We have to be prepared. Board up your windows, gather your weapons, and stay together. We will survive this night." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the town in a blue twilight, the residents of Boundary fortified their homes. Windows were boarded up, doors were bolted, and makeshift barricades were erected. Guns, knives, and any weapon that could be found were gathered and distributed. The men and women of Boundary steeled themselves for the night ahead. The first attack came just after dark. A massive dire wolf, its fur dark and matted, lunged out of the forest, smashing through a wooden barricade with terrifying ease. Gunshots rang out, and the beast fell, but its death was only the beginning. More wolves emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. Sarah Bennett, a schoolteacher, found herself trapped in her home with her 2 children. The sound of the wolves outside was deafening, their claws scraping against the walls as they tried to break in. Sarah clutched a shotgun, her hands trembling but her resolve firm. She had to protect her children. At the town square, a group of men led by Sheriff Carter fought valiantly, their guns blazing as they tried to hold the line. The wolves were relentless, their strength and speed overwhelming. Several men fell, their screams echoing through the night. But Sheriff Carter refused to give up, his determination driving him to keep fighting. In another part of town, old Mr. Thompson, a retired blacksmith, wielded a heavy iron hammer. He swung it with surprising strength for his age, crushing the skull of a wolf that had broken into his workshop. His wife, Martha, stood by his side, a kitchen knife in hand, ready to defend their home. As the night wore on, the townspeople of Boundary found themselves locked in a desperate battle for survival. The wolves were unlike any adversary they had ever faced, their sheer size and ferocity making them nearly unstoppable. But the residents fought with a tenacity born of desperation, their fear fueling their will to live. Midnight came and went, and still the wolves attacked. The town was a battlefield, the snow stained with blood and littered with the bodies of both men and beasts. The howls of the wolves mingled with the cries of the injured and dying, creating a symphony of terror that seemed endless. Yet, amid the chaos, moments of heroism shone through. Sarah Bennett managed to kill a wolf that had broken through her door, saving her children from certain death. Sheriff Carter, despite his injuries, continued to rally the townspeople, his leadership giving them the strength to keep fighting. Old Mr. Thompson and Martha held their ground, their love for each other and their home giving them the courage to face the beasts. As the first light of dawn began to break, the attacks finally ceased. The surviving wolves slumped back into the forest, their howls fading into the distance. The townspeople, bloodied and battered, emerged from their homes, their faces etched with exhaustion and grief. They had survived the night, but the cost was high. Mayor Daniels surveyed the town square, the scene of the fiercest fighting. "We did it," he said, his voice hoarse. "We survived." "But for how long?" Sheriff Carter replied, his face grim. "They'll be back. We have to be ready." The townspeople set to work immediately, tending to the wounded and reinforcing their defenses. They buried their dead with heavy hearts, each grave a stark reminder of the price they had paid. But there was no time for mourning. The wolves would return, and they had to be prepared. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting a pale light over the town, the residents of Boundary worked tirelessly. They knew the night would come again, bringing with it the horrors they had faced. But they were determined to stand firm, to protect their home and each other. Sarah Bennett gathered her children, her resolve hardening. "We'll get through this," she said, her voice steady. "We have to." Old Mr. Thompson, his hammer still in hand, nodded. "We'll fight," he said. "For our town, for our families. We'll fight." The day passed in a blur of activity, every moment spent preparing for the next night. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the town, the residents of Boundary braced themselves. The howls of the wolves echoed once more, signaling the start of another battle. But this time, the townspeople were ready. They had faced the beasts before and survived. They had learned from their mistakes, fortified their defenses, and steeled their hearts. As the first wolf emerged from the forest, the townspeople stood together, their weapons raised, their resolve unbreakable. The battle that night was fierce, but the townspeople fought with a determination that the wolves had not expected. The beasts were powerful, but the unity and courage of the residents of Boundary proved to be a formidable force. They defended their homes, their families, and their lives with a ferocity that matched the wolves. When dawn broke once more, the wolves retreated, their numbers significantly diminished. The town stood strong, the resolve of its people unshaken. They had faced the terror of the dire wolves and emerged victorious. Mayor Daniels, his face etched with exhaustion but filled with pride, addressed the town. "We have faced the darkness and prevailed," he said. "But our fight is not over. We must remain vigilant, for the wolves will return. But as long as we stand together, we will protect our home." The residents of Boundary nodded, their hearts filled with a renewed sense of hope and determination. They knew the nights ahead would be difficult, but they also knew that they were not alone. They had each other, and together, they would face whatever challenges came their way. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting a warm light over the town, the residents of Boundary prepared for the days and nights to come. They had faced the dire wolves and survived, and they would continue to protect their home, no matter the cost.